So a man who owned a fleet of ships and a fishing business was walking down the dock, and he was checking on all of his boats, making sure everything was working properly. And he came across a fisherman who was just sitting by on the dock, lazily letting the day go by, at least in his opinion. So he stopped and he asked this fisherman who was just sitting there, "Why aren't you out there fishing?" And the fisherman said, "Well, because I've caught enough fish for today." "Well, then why don't you go and use your time and catch more fish?" Which the fisherman said, "Well, why would I go and do that?" Well, the rich man who owned this fleet of boats in this business, he said, "Well, you could earn more money, and you could buy a better boat, and then you could go out deeper, and then you could catch more fish. Then you could go and buy nylon nets and catch even more fish, and then you could make more money. Then you would have a fleet of boats, and then you could be wealthy just like me." And the fisherman said, "Well, why would I do that?" "Well, then you can sit down and enjoy life." To which the fisherman said, "What do you think I'm doing right now?" Contentment. Came across a really good definition. It's challenging, but good. Where it says that contentment, or being content, is the knowledge that things are okay exactly as they are right now. It's challenging, isn't it? Contentment, when it comes to the New Testament, is found in two key texts. One in Philippians chapter 4, where it speaks of being content in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And Lord willing, that's what we will discuss next week. The other is found in the text that was just read for us in 1 Timothy chapter 6. And instead of dealing with circumstances, the Apostle Paul speaks, through inspiration of the Holy Spirit, of our material goods, our wealth, our riches, the money that we have in our pockets, maybe the money that we have access to. And the challenge of this definition, when it comes to our material goods, are things okay exactly as they are right now? Because there is no doubt that the majority of us check our accounts once a day, if not several. And in that, when we see this number that's attached, not the one that's coming out, but this available funds, your heart either rises or it falls, but it never really stays the same. And in that moment, when this definition came, when I came across it earlier this week, boy, what a test. What a test for us. What a challenge. And that's not just with available funds. We're entering into the season that, yes, is joyful and happy, but we are reminded with every step of the way, with every ad that we listen to, with every commercial that we see, don't be content with what you have. You need this. You need this. So before we go further, let's talk about what it means to be discontent. And just from a perspective of being discontent, we're going to look at it in this way. Discontentment is usually in this thought process. If I can only get X, Y, Z, then I will be X, Y, Z. If I can only have, fill in the blank. If I could only have a different school. If I could only have a different job. If I could only have another phone. If I could only have, fill in the blank. Then I will be happy. Then I will be joyful. Then I will be satisfied. Then I will be, fill in the blank. And our society plays to the discontent. And at the same time, it plays to the idea that if you get this, whatever it is, if you get this material thing, if you get this latest gadget, if you get this, then you will have this. You will be fulfilled and you will be happy and you will have everything that you need and you'll have everything that you want and your dreams and your hopes will finally come true. But it hinges on this one thing. So I want to pick up with 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 17 where the Apostle Paul says this, that as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, not to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God who richly provides us with everything. And I want to just crack this verse open, if that's okay. Because there are three things that you notice in this one verse that really speak to the heart of contentment. Really speak to the heart of what we're trying to gain, especially when it comes to our material goods. So Paul's first warning to Timothy is actually in the context that he and his ministry is going to be contrasted with false teachers. And part of the thing that is the motivation for false teachers is that they are greedy. They're greedy for position, they're greedy for power, but they're also greedy for money. They're greedy for funds. That's why Paul says that there are those who actually think that godliness is actually, it's a way in which I can gain things in this life. That godliness, if I can just portray godliness, not really be concerned with it, but just portray it, then that can help me gain power and prestige. And if I get a little jingle in my pocket, well, then that's just icing on the cake. And Paul tells Timothy that's not who you're supposed to be. That's not what the ministry is for. The church is not a means to gain. It is not a means to be a stepping stone into a different life and to have a comfortable and good life. So he constantly warns Timothy in this last letter that he writes to him. You need to be on guard, and you'll see this theme. Now he gets proactive in this verse, and he tells Timothy, those who are rich, those who are wealthy, you need to give them a charge. Now, before we go any further, it seems like today's day, it's good to demonize those who are wealthy. Money is neutral. It's not good or bad. It just is. Money, wealth, riches is not good or bad. It's neutral. We don't need to demonize it. Don't need to feel guilty in terms of bettering our life. What Paul is going to instruct Timothy so that he can pass this on to those who are under his care is to have the proper view of money. Which is why he doesn't talk with money or wealth or riches to begin with. He actually speaks of the attitude. Tell them, charge them, do not be haughty. Don't be prideful. Don't be arrogant. If you haven't noticed, we live in a very affluent part of the state. Some who are very prideful, where they live and what they drive. The wealthy, the rich, are not to be haughty. Now, we may be thinking, well, I'm not rich. If you turned a knob this morning and running water came out, you are more wealthy than 98% of this world. Puts wealth in a perspective, doesn't it? If you opened an account and you have $9,000 in it, you are more wealthy than 90% of this world, who live off of $9,000 total a year. Many of us make that just a few weeks, perhaps just a few months. So wealth and riches, we are not absolved of that because we think that we are not that way. Running water, electricity. If you slept on a mattress with a spring, you are wealthy. If you have food to eat this morning, you're wealthy. Don't be arrogant, says the Apostle Paul. Tell those who are within the church, and Timothy, this includes yourself, don't be haughty, don't be arrogant. Instead, you know what's inferred. Have humility when it comes to the material things. Have humility when it comes to wealth. Have humility when it comes to riches. Have humility when it comes to all the things that you consider to be a material blessing. Have humility. And there are two ways in which Paul indicates humility. One is that you know what is temporary and you know what is eternal. For we brought nothing into this world. How quickly we forget that. But we brought nothing into this world, and it is for sure that we cannot take anything out of this world. We can prepare for our funeral. We can even prepay for our funeral. But after that, nothing is going with us. Not one thing on our Christmas list in the next month and a half will be going with us. The car that we drove here this morning will not go with us. And I can say this with full certainty, the Lord will not open our account like we did this morning and look at the available funds and determine our eternal destiny based on that. We brought nothing into this world. We will take nothing out of this world. We will not have it. And Paul says, you charge them, the arrogant, and as much as we spend our time and we invest in all of these things, use it, keep it in its proper place, work honestly, because you're not entitled to anything in this life, which is a whole other sermon in of itself. But know what happens. Know what happened at the beginning and know what happens at the end. When you came into this world, you had nothing. And when you leave this world, you will have nothing when it comes to material things. Keep them in their proper place and proper perspective. Humility knows that. Humility knows that I need the available funds, I need the clothing, I need all of these things, but humility knows that it wasn't even by my own hand that I had these. It is because someone else made them. Someone else grew it. Someone else did all of these things. Contentment and gratefulness are rooted in humility. Well, what am I supposed to do then? If you're talking about the beginning of my life and the end of my life, then what about everything in between? What am I to do with my wealth? What am I to do with what God has given? Well, Paul will say this. Here's what they are to do, because you almost hear this question. Here's what they are to do. Here's what we are to do. They are to do good. Be rich in good works. Be generous. Ready to share. I don't know about you, and I'm thankful that Brooke put this list together for us of the giving opportunities we've had the past few weeks and then what we'll have throughout the end of the year. I did not realize how much we missed with not having these opportunities last year. We've had a full year to be ready to be generous, to be ready to share, to be ready to participate in good works, to be ready to do good. But then we didn't have to wait to the end of the year because we could have done that with our local schools. We would have done that with our neighbors. What am I supposed to do with the material blessings? Am I supposed to just give on a Sunday morning and then the next 6 days I'm good? No, it's an active lifestyle. How do you know that you are well on your way to living a content life? How eager and ready am I to do good, to be generous, to share, to participate in good works? Humility drives me to that. And Paul reminds us as a congregation, all these many years later, this is what we are to do. This is what we are to be. Now, one more thing, and I don't have the verse on here again. I thought about putting it up there twice, but I thought it'd be good to read it one more time from the Scripture. So that first movement of not being haughty, not having arrogance or pride when it comes to it. He mentions something very interesting about wealth in verse 17. Going back to it, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty. And then he says, nor set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches. Now, the original word that we find in the original language can mean three things. It can mean uncertainty. It can mean unreliable. But I actually like the other meaning of it. It means that it can fall short of expectations. Now, we get uncertainty. That's what we're hearing. That's seems to be in every other sentence on news reports, isn't it? We get unreliability. Even if you follow stock markets and all kinds of other things, you see the value of the dollar going up and down, up and down. That's just unreliable. I know there's other things that factor into it. But that last statement, that last definition of what that original word would mean in terms of this set of expectations. And the idea that Paul is telling Timothy, who should communicate to himself and to everyone else, there's something about money, there's something about wealth and riches that we do that actually is one of the most unwise things. By saying, if I only have this, then I will have this. We are placing a set of expectations on it, whatever it is. If I only had a new job and made more money, then we could, and we start talking about as a family, and that may be true, but we're placing a set of expectations on this job to provide a particular amount of income, but ultimately to provide joy or happiness, whatever that other blank was. And a lot of the reason why we are discontent is because whatever we are trusting in at the moment, we have discovered does not meet expectations. We are discontent with a relationship because that relationship, we've placed expectations on another person, and they have failed to meet those expectations. We have placed expectations on a job, and then when that job doesn't meet it, then we're dissatisfied with it. We place it on churches. We place it on schools. We place it on all sorts of things. We place those expectations on it. Timothy Keller, in his book, Counterfeit Gods, will give a definition in the introduction of what an idol is. And a part of that definition is that we place on something, expecting it to, and this is my words, expecting it to meet a need that only God can provide. We're placing this expectation of joy, of contentment, of happiness, of gain, of whatever. We're placing it on this thing. And he says that is part of an idol factory. That's how we make idols in our heart. Because we have believed that this is the key to whatever it is. So when he tells the group, don't place your hopes on the uncertainty of riches. You need to know your money can do a lot of things. Your wealth can do a lot of things. But it will not always meet expectations. It will not always live up to the dream. It will not always live up to the hope. It will not always live up to whatever you believe that it will. Solomon understood this after much experimentation. In Ecclesiastes 5:10, going from the New Living Translation, those who love money will never have enough. But notice this last statement. How meaningless to think that wealth brings happiness. You want a really good thought exercise? Just take the word wealth out and place whatever it is that you've been expecting to bring happiness into your life. Place it there. How meaningless it is to think this. Fill in the blank. Do it in your own mind for a moment. Do that thought exercise and just substitute, instead of the word wealth, whatever it is that's on your heart or your mind at this moment. How meaningless it is, says the wisest man outside of Christ to have ever lived, to think this is the path, to think this is the way, that if I just walk this line, if I walk this road, if I'm on this sidewalk, and I head in this direction, I will find happiness. I will find joy. I will find fulfillment. I will find my fleet of boats. Solomon, after an experimentation, says you can't find it there. You may find moments. You may find pockets. You might find seasons. But you will not find what it is that you're truly looking for. Wealth can't do it for you. Your job can't do it for you. Your relationship with someone else can't do it for you. There's only one being in the entire universe that can truly give you your heart's desire. There's only one being in the entire cosmos that lives up to expectations and surpasses them. So Jesus would say when he's trying to teach, and this young man who's got his brother in the crowd, he just interrupts Jesus, and my paraphrase, "Hey, Lord, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Tell him to give me what's mine. Tell him to give me my fair share." And before he goes into the parable of the rich man who tears down his existing barns to build bigger ones, he gives us this one statement that should echo in our hearts and our minds all the time when it comes to material goods. Take care. Be on guard against all covetousness. This is a good verse to remember for us. One's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. What does my life, up to this point, what have I believed in my heart of hearts, my life to consist of? What is it? If it's wealth, that's not what life consists of. You know this, and I know this. We know this when babies are born. We're just thankful they're healthy. Life doesn't consist of what they have when they come into this world. Life doesn't consist of those things. And you fast forward all the way to the end of life, and those of us that have been there with loved ones, life doesn't consist of what they have the moment they take their last breath and exhale it out. We know this. We know this. It doesn't matter what they have on. It doesn't matter what they've accomplished. And what's so amazing to me, I've shared this with you before, every person at a funeral that I've attended or I have had the honor of conducting, when it comes to the obituary and it speaks of this snapshot of their life, more space is dedicated to the type of person they are than what they accomplished. Doesn't mean that what they accomplished doesn't matter, but it's who they were. And it's what they did. And you will hear amazing father, loving mother. You never hear a wealthy dad. You never hear those types of adjectives. The person who keeps that, Jesus says, that's a wise individual who keeps it in the proper perspective. And contentment is knowing that life doesn't consist of what's in my possession right now. Or my life doesn't consist of what the commercial that I saw this morning telling me that I need. I don't need to always have the upgrade of something. I don't always need to have the latest. Because life doesn't consist of the abundance of what exists in one's possessions. So he says, put your hope. Don't put your hope on that. Then what do? Contentment puts its hope on the right object. 1 Peter 1 verse 21, who through Jesus are believers in God, who raised Jesus from the dead and gave Jesus glory, so that your faith, and here's our underlying point, your hope, that's in God. Why? Because God is the path to joy. God is the path to contentment. God is the path to all the things. That's why Paul says the secret is Jesus and the strength that He provides. That's the reason I can accomplish all things, including not falling prey to discontentment, but to contentment. The question is, on what have I hoped in? On who am I hoping in? Why am I hoping in that individual? And only God is the one who meets the expectation. Do you know how? And this is the backwards way of doing it. Because He did the unexpected. He brought somebody back from the dead to never die again. He did the most unexpected thing at the most unexpected time. That's why Peter points us to the resurrection of Jesus. Because God, if your hope is in Him, then He will do the expected, He will meet the expected, and on occasion, He will do the unexpected. You know why? Because all things are possible with Him. Nothing is impossible for Him. Put your hope in that, because we know on all the things that are created in this world, there are limitations to them. But you and I believe in a God who has no limitations. Put your hope in Him. Put your heart on Him. Put your mind on Him. Not what's in your pocketbook. Not what you opened up in an account this morning. Not on the stock market when it's going up and down, and your heart's going up and down with it. No, we put our hearts and our hopes in God. Because there is no up and down with Him. That's why He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is consistent. There is nothing uncertain about Him, nothing unreliable about Him, and He has not once, since day one, failed to meet expectations for those who love Him and follow Him. And He will do the same for us. So the Hebrew writer says this: keep your life free from the love of money. Be content with what you have. Why? For He has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So I want to close with a prayer. It's an anonymous prayer. But I think it would be a great challenge for us, especially with the final question that is asked. The prayer goes like this: Dear Lord, I have been rereading the record of the rich young ruler and his obvious wrong choice. But Lord, it has got me thinking. No matter how much wealth he had, he could not ride in a car, have a surgery, turn on a light, buy medicine, hear music, watch TV, wash dishes and clothes and running water, type a letter, cut grass, fly in an airplane, sleep on a mattress, talk on a phone. Lord, if he was rich, then what am I? If you need to respond to the goodness of our Lord, we encourage you to do so this morning. Because there is one thing we do take with us when we leave this life. It's the salvation of our soul. And if you have not responded to the Lord, to His gospel, to His good news, we'd encourage you to arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. And if you need the prayers of your church family, if there's anything we can do to help you or to serve you, let us know as we stand and sing.